Hi, I'm Ed White, and I was asked to speak to youth on justice. And when I was asked to do it originally, I was like, man, all right, that's hard. It's kind of a weird topic. I feel like it's super easy in like concept to get like, yeah, justice, like it makes sense, but it's like also super hard. You know, it's like it's easy as like simple math, like 1 + 1, but it's like just as hard as astrophysics. Even Aaron and I were having a conversation just before doing this, like about a completely different thing that I didn't even talk about in here. And it was just kind of a really tough thing. Like, hey, I didn't get justice. But as I was working through this, I was like, all right, I came with like some basic 3 things I feel like you guys and anyone would need to know and really kind of think about. So I'm gonna take you through these 3 thoughts. First one, what do you say about justice? Where does it hit you? Second one, what does our world say about justice? And then the third one, what does the word say about justice? So we'll start with 1. What do you say about justice? So maybe you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but it's a huge hot topic right now. You can't avoid it anywhere. Everybody's talking about justice in one way or another now in our world. But what does it mean to you? When you hear it, what comes to mind? How do you relate to the word itself? Now, I challenge you to think about these possible scenarios. Have you ever felt like you were done wrong? At all? Like maybe you and your brother got a different punishment for breaking the same house rule. Or maybe like you had the same teacher as your older sister, but the homework was different and you got graded harder. Or better yet, most of you guys have played sports, and maybe if you haven't, you can still relate with this, but maybe there's a referee or an umpire that you felt misjudges you or your team. Like, hey man, this guy's literally punching me, didn't see it. And then you do something that's actually legal and they're like, nope, you're wrong, you're thrown out of the game. You know, things like that happen and it's crazy. But maybe it's something else entirely, but think about these moments. How did you feel when that happened? What did you want out of those moments after they happened? Now, as you read through the word, there are countless psalms that deal with the same emotions you may even still be feeling about it. But I'll hit more on that later. Now, most of you guys know that I'm a public school teacher, and as a teacher, I consistently have to think about the idea of justice, and it informs how I teach and informs my efforts in recruiting students. Often the words we talk about in the school system are equality and equity. Now, my take on these is definitely flavored from that lens in the classroom. So to me, equality is like when everyone starts in the same place and given the exact same information so that they can grow and learn in the exact same way, if they so choose. Now, equity, on the other hand, to me, is meeting students where they are and giving the opportunity for all students to reach the exact same place, if they so choose. I think that in essence, equity is supposed to reach more people and then give the many differences in our personalities more choices so that we can have more opportunities to succeed. Now, a part of our conversation in schools is how these 2 words pertain to justice or fairness for all. And that always seems to muddy the waters somehow. My personal thought on this has to do a little bit with the fascination with the fall and what it means. The fall being when Adam and Eve, ate the apple and all of that with the snake. So C.S. Lewis wrote a space trilogy that kind of tackles the fall in the 2nd book, which is called Perelandra. Now, I highly recommend this series for any of you, but more in particular if you're into really old school sci-fi. Anyway, it hit me in a really hard spot right there, like at a really important time, and it got me really thinking about it. So the fall itself is found in Genesis 3:14-19. Adam and Eve eat the fruit from the forbidden tree. Then the Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts in the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." To the woman he said, "I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall roll over you. And to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten the tree which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat all of the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you were dust, and to dust you shall return. Boom! First judgment. It's the first example of justice carried out. It's like super simple, like, guys, you had one job. We can see right away that the judgment given meant something got taken away from the offending party, Adam and Eve. It was kind of a big something, but they also only had one rule not to break. So this is a negative judgment, but can you have positive judgment? Well, of course you can, but we'll come back to this idea. Now, I personally believe humanity has been trying to find ways to restore their own justice since the fall. So let's take a look at the second thought. Boom, 2. What does our world say about justice? Now, obviously, most of us watching this are probably more familiar with our own country's justice system, United States, and how at least it should work. But a lot of the world has taken the exact same philosophies that the US took to build their own justice system. So we'll work from there. Now, I bet you have seen the picture of a lady wearing a toga, holding up a scale, wielding a sword, and blindfolded. If you haven't, you should look her up. Just stop, pause, and just type that into your smartphone, lady, whatever. Her name is Lady Justice. And no, she's not some made-up superhero from Detective Comics. Now, I find this personification of justice super interesting. It's a woman, blindfolded, carrying a scale in one hand and a sword in the other. She's actually a Roman goddess. And she was introduced not long before Jesus was born, super interestingly. Now, symbols are really important in their use for understanding how a culture views something. So let's break it down a little bit. First, why does she carry the scale? I feel like this one's rather easy. She weighs the evidence of every case as they stand in their own. So as you tip the scale one way or the other, she proves your innocence or guilt. Why does she carry the sword? Well, she's swift and possibly deadly. Either way, it's authoritative in the time she was created. Sword had a lot of meaning behind it and had a lot of strength behind it. Next, why is she blindfolded? Why is justice blind? Fun fact, she was not originally blindfolded, but it was added in the 1500s to show impartiality to cases, in the way of trying to show that justice is fair to all, regardless of your status, class, race, whatever it is. So, in the dictionary, the definitions of justice are: first, just behavior or treatment. Second one, the quality of being fair and reasonable. And the third one, the administration of the law or authority and maintaining this. Now, I think they're all saying the exact same thing that Lady Justice represents, even though that last one sounds a bit confusing. But it's basically referencing the need for laws to guide judgment. So in our nations, we write down the laws for everyone to know and see. And then if you are put on trial for any reason, the law will guide the decision of innocence or guilt. In fact, in our nation, all those laws are put up on display, as you can find on the internet. Again, if you want to, you can look up any law that we have in the United States. It's that simple. Now, does this sound fair and reasonable? Now imagine if you are judging a case. Maybe you even had to do this among your friends, or better yet, your siblings. Is it easy to be blind or impartial? Is it always appropriate to be blind? Then, since with your friends, there may not be a bunch of set laws. I know I don't sit around with my friends and write down like, hey, so if you do this to me, you don't do that. There may not be set laws to do about the judgment. So, will you show mercy? Or, nah, don't think so. But think about this. How many times have you been wronged and you wanted the other person punished and you didn't think it was enough? Or maybe you admitted to doing something wrong, but you thought the punishment that came down was too harsh. Or for some of you guys, you thought it was too light because you just roll like that. Although it's not often spoken about this way. Justice is giving what is fairly due, good or bad. The idea of mercy is that your judge has every right to punish you, but chooses not to. Wow. Let that sink in for a second. Every single time I hear that, it hits. Chooses not to. In the end here though, there's no revenge for the offended party. Does that mean that no justice was served? Well, justice seems so simple in general, but I think this spot right here is where justice itself as a term gets really hard again. And when things get hard, that leads us right to the word. That's where we gotta go. So let's skip ahead in our story a little bit of Adam and Eve, and we'll hit our third thought. What does the word say about justice? Now, the Hebrew people had a lot of laws. It seemed that abiding by them was to bring you closest to righteousness or closest to redemption before God. Now, this is one reason I have the idea that humanity have been just trying to restore themselves since the fall. These laws have much to say on justice, but here's a small sample that seems to stay true to what the world says about justice. Leviticus 19:15. It's a law that says no injustice in court. You must be impartial. Okay. In Deuteronomy 16:18 through 20 is another law. You must be impartial. No bribes. And it says specifically, bribes blind the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of the righteous. In those books, and even Exodus, all a part of the Hebrew law, words like revenge, restitution, mercy are found throughout. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for life. It's also found in each one of these books. Now, it sounds super cut and dry, but even if you read through Judges, Samuel, Kings, or Chronicles, where you see actual people enacting these laws, it was often found not to be enough, and sometimes too much. So the Hebrew people, just like us, seemed to add more and more laws on top of other laws, to make sure that people didn't break them, and therefore assure their redemption as a people. Now, I guess my questions would be, why did they feel they needed to do this? Well, knowing their history, they knew their own history really well. They were God's chosen people, and they were going to bring justice to the whole world. No pressure. Now, there are hints to what this means littered throughout Scripture, but the main thing that they knew is that they didn't want to get caught on the wrong side of that coming judgment. So they added more laws, and more laws, and more laws. Sadly, this means that they missed out on a lot of the messages about their coming Messiah. Like this one from Isaiah 30:18 through 19. Therefore the Lord waits to be gracious to you, and therefore he exalts himself to show mercy to you. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all those who wait for him. For a people shall dwell in Zion, in Jerusalem. You shall weep no more. He will surely be gracious to you at the sound of your cry. As soon as he hears it, he answers you. Or this one from Isaiah 51:4 through 8. Give attention to me, my people, and give ear to me, my nation. For a law will go out from me, and I will set my justice for a light to the people. My righteousness draws near. My salvation has gone out, and my arms will judge the people. The coastlands hope for me, and for my arm they will wait. Lift up your eyes to the heavens, and look at the earth beneath. For the heavens vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like a garment, and they who dwell in it will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will never be dismayed. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my law. Fear not the reproach of man, nor be dismayed at their revilings. For the moth will eat them up like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my righteousness will be forever, and my salvation to all generations. There's even earlier passages written by David, like Psalm 143, which we had over the summer, and the many other psalms asking for righteous justice, not of all of which came to pass against someone, but may have instead shown grace to the one calling out. God's justice sounds different than what they, nor we, can even actuate. Now, I'm sure you have learned that Jesus' teaching was radical, but it's hard to see that when we live in a time that knows, or at least readily has, his teachings everywhere, and they're even embedded in non-Christian life. But The Apostle Matthew was very well versed in Hebrew law, so his gospel is very important for deciphering the Hebrew understandings of the original law that Jesus was debunking in his time with them. So let's take Matthew 5:38 through 42. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other one also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. What? So how is this justice? If I follow that line of thinking, how do I get mine? Why won't they get theirs? Just reminds me of Jonah so much. But here's a fact. You don't. They don't. And that's just it. Our laws are flawed because our judges are flawed. Just like us, they're all fallen. And sometimes they're not blind when they need to be. And sometimes they're blindfolded when they need to see. In all the areas of my life, personally, I think about my part in being fair to others. And although I try to lean on God's understanding and not my own, I know I get it wrong a lot. When I read John 15:1-2 about God pruning the vine and judging our fruit, where he says, I am the true vine and my father is a hairdresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. I know that's certainly not my job, and I know that many people are thankful for that too. So what's your response? How do we get the justice that we desire when we're wrong? Or know how to rightfully act in a tough situation where we might be on the judge's seat? Jesus told us this parable found in Luke 18, basically saying, ask God to restore you. Luke 18:1-8. And he told them a parable to the effect that they ought to always pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. For a while he refused. Then afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice, so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will not God give justice to his elect, us, who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? The idea that even this unrighteous judge can give out grace, a gift undeserved, or mercy, deserved punishment withheld, should give you hope. In Matthew 7, when Jesus tells his disciples to knock on the door and it will be open to him, he ends that same passage with, if you who are evil know how to give good things, harsh. But this means that we were made with this ability to be just and fair. And I think Jesus tells us how when he finishes with the essence of the entire Hebrew law. Whatever you wish others would do for you, do for them. Now, this is not a new thought, but it might have been lost in the mire of the Hebrew law. It can be read in the minor prophet Zechariah 7:9. Thus says the Lord of hosts, render true judgments, show kindness and mercy to one another. Do not oppress the widow, the fatherless, the sojourner, or the poor, and let none of you devise evil against another in your heart. Then later, as Paul wrote in Romans 12:17-20, repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. for by doing so you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. What now? So I think we should go back to our personal take on justice. So that takes me back to the classroom. When I'm there, when I run into something that hits me and I have to actually judge something, I try to remember Genesis 1:26-27, where God created us all in his image. It's actually where the idea in America of all men are created equal, all people are created equal comes to mind. Actually, it's where it comes from. So with this in mind, I can say that everyone in my classroom, and beyond, deserves a chance at greatness, at success. So I will teach them all equally and offer extra time to make it equitable for all as well. So what happens is that I have to sacrifice something, generally my time, to ensure that fairness or justice abounds for my students. Something has to be freely given. See, in the end, we live in a fallen world. So without God, there is no justice for one person, without a little pain or loss for another. I'll end with this word from Luke 10:25-37. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And the lawyer answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Jesus replied to him, "You have answered this correctly. Do this and you will live." Now, the lawyer, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, "Who is my neighbor then?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him, and then departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that same road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, also passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And on the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these 3, do you think, proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? The lawyer said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise."